If you're over 70, there are changes happening in your body right now that most people misunderstand completely. Not because these changes aren't important, but because we've been taught to see aging as nothing but decline. We look for what's breaking down, what's slowing, what's failing. And in doing that, we miss something remarkable. We miss the signs that show us our body is actually doing exactly what it should be doing, adapting in ways that protect us, that keep us steady, that allow us to keep living with dignity and independence. I've spent years watching people age, and I can tell you this with certainty. Some of the things you might be worried about, some of the changes you've noticed and wondered if they mean something's wrong, they might actually be signs that your body is aging gracefully, that it's working for you, not against you. Good morning. My name is Harold Bennett, and I've spent most of my life watching patterns. Patterns in how people age, and what separates those who stay independent well into their 80s and 90s from those who struggle earlier than they should. I'm not a doctor. I don't have medical credentials, but I've learned to recognize what matters, what the small signs mean, and I've helped enough people understand their own aging that I think I can help you too. Today, I want to talk about something that might surprise you. The unexpected signs that your body is actually aging well. Because if you're like most people over 70, you're probably focusing on all the wrong things. You're worried about every ache, every change, every difference from how you felt at 50. And some of those worries are worth paying attention to, absolutely. But some of the very things that concern you most, might actually be evidence that your body is adapting beautifully to this stage of life. I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to share with you. And if you find this helpful, if this changes how you think about what's happening in your own body, I hope you'll consider subscribing. I make these videos because I believe this information matters, and I'd like to keep this conversation going with you. Let me start with something I've noticed again and again. You might have realized that you're sleeping differently now than you did 20 years ago. Maybe you wake up earlier, even when you don't want to. Maybe you find yourself tired earlier in the evening, ready for bed by 9 o'clock when you used to stay up until 11 or midnight. And maybe you've worried about this. Maybe you've thought something's wrong with your sleep, that you should be able to sleep the way you used to. But here's what I want you to understand. This change in your sleep pattern, this shift toward earlier sleep and earlier waking, it's often a sign that your body's internal clock is actually working well. Studies have shown that as we age, our circadian rhythm naturally shifts earlier. And when your body follows that rhythm instead of fighting it, when you feel sleepy earlier and wake earlier, it usually means your brain is producing melatonin at the right times. It means your body is syncing with its natural patterns. I've watched two women, both 72, both retired teachers, handle this same change in completely different ways. Margaret fought it. She stayed up late watching television because she thought she should, because that's what she'd always done. She'd lie in bed until 9 or 10 at night, even though she felt tired at 7. And then she'd wake at 5 in the morning feeling groggy, frustrated, like her sleep was broken. She started taking sleep aids. She worried constantly about insomnia. Susan did something different. When she noticed she was getting tired earlier, she listened to her body. She started going to bed at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. She stopped forcing herself to stay awake. And she woke naturally around 5:30 or 6, feeling rested. She used those early morning hours for things she loved, quiet time with coffee and a book, a walk before the day got busy. Susan accepted that her rhythm had changed, and in accepting it, she found better sleep than she'd had in years. Her body was aging gracefully, and she let it. The difference between them wasn't in their bodies. It was in their understanding. Margaret thought the change meant something was wrong. Susan recognized it as adaptation, and that recognition made all the difference in how rested, how capable, how independent each of them felt. The next thing I've noticed, and this one surprises people, is about appetite. You might have realized you're not as hungry as you used to be. Maybe you eat smaller portions now. Maybe you skip meals sometimes without even thinking about it. And perhaps you've worried that this means something's failing, that you're losing interest in food, that it's a sign of decline. But let me explain what I mean by this. As your body ages, your metabolism naturally slows. You need fewer calories to maintain your weight, to fuel your daily activities. And when your appetite decreases to match that need, when you feel satisfied with less food, that's actually your body regulating itself beautifully. It's responding to what it truly requires. The problem comes when people ignore this signal and force themselves to eat the same portions they ate at 50 or when they worry so much about the change that they stop eating enough of the right things. I knew two men, both 75, both living alone after losing their wives. Joe worried about his smaller appetite. He thought it meant he was getting weak, so he forced himself to finish full meals even when he felt full halfway through. He gained weight he didn't need to carry. His knees hurt more. He felt sluggish, uncomfortable. He associated eating with duty, with forcing himself, and meals became something he dreaded. Frank noticed the same change in his appetite, but he responded differently. He started eating smaller, more frequent meals. He paid attention to when he was actually hungry and ate then. He focused on nutrient-dense foods, things that gave him energy and strength without filling him up past comfort. And Frank maintained a steady, healthy weight. He felt light on his feet. He had energy for the things he wanted to do. His body was telling him it needed less volume, but the same nutrition, and he listened. The unexpected sign here is that decreased appetite, when it's gradual and natural, often means your body is regulating itself properly. It's matching your intake to your actual needs. That's graceful aging. That's your body working for you. I hope this is making sense so far. These aren't the things we usually think of as positive signs, are they? But that's exactly my point. We need to learn to read our bodies differently. Here's another change you might have noticed. Your sense of thirst might not be as strong as it used to be. You might go hours without thinking about water. And this one genuinely does require your attention because dehydration is dangerous. But here's what I want you to understand about it. The fact that your thirst mechanism has changed doesn't mean your body is failing. It means your body is aging, and you need to adapt your habits to match. The graceful part, the part that shows your body is doing well, comes in how your kidneys respond when you do drink water. If you're aging well, your kidneys are still concentrating your urine properly. They're still maintaining your electrolyte balance. They're still doing their job, even if they're doing it a bit more slowly than they used to. The sign of graceful aging here isn't that your thirst is the same as it was at 40. It's that when you make the conscious choice to drink water regularly, when you keep a glass by your chair and sip from it throughout the day, your body uses that water efficiently. You stay clear-headed. Your skin maintains its elasticity better than people who don't drink enough. You don't get dizzy when you stand up. I've seen this play out with two women I knew, both 78, both widows living in the same retirement community. Carol waited until she felt thirsty to drink. Sometimes that meant she'd go all morning with just a cup of coffee. By afternoon, she'd feel foggy, tired, sometimes a little dizzy. She thought this was just part of being her age. She accepted feeling slightly unwell as normal. Nancy did something simple but profound. She filled a large water bottle every morning and made sure she finished it by evening. She didn't wait for thirst. She just drank steadily, a little bit all day long. And Nancy felt sharper. She had more energy. When she stood up from a chair, she felt steady. Her doctor commented on how well her kidneys were functioning for her age. The difference wasn't in their body's basic capabilities. It was in Nancy recognizing that her thirst signal had changed and adapting her behavior to support what her body needed. That adaptation, that conscious partnering with your body's new patterns, that's what graceful aging looks like in practice. Now let me talk about something that might seem completely opposite to what I've just said. You might have noticed that you get cold more easily than you used to. You might wear sweaters in summer. You might keep your house warmer than your children think is necessary. And perhaps you felt embarrassed about this, like it means you're fragile, like it's weakness. But here's what this actually tells us. When your body is aging gracefully, it's making intelligent choices about where to send warmth. Your core temperature regulation is protecting your vital organs first. Your heart, your lungs, your brain, these get priority. Your hands and feet might feel colder because your body is being strategic. It's not failing to warm you. It's choosing what matters most. The sign that you're aging gracefully isn't that you feel as warm as you did at 50. It's that your core stays warm, that your vital functions continue steadily, that you can recognize the change and dress for it without shame. I've watched people your age struggle with this in two very different ways. Robert refused to acknowledge he felt cold. He kept his house at the same temperature he'd always kept it, wore the same light clothing, insisted nothing had changed. And he was uncomfortable all the time. He spent his days feeling chilly, distracted by it, unable to focus on anything else. His body was working to keep him alive, and he was making that work harder by refusing to adapt. Walter noticed he felt colder and responded simply. He wore layers. He kept a warm blanket on his favorite chair. He didn't apologize for it, didn't feel diminished by it. He stayed comfortable, and because he was comfortable, he could focus on everything else in his life that mattered. He could read, visit with friends, work in his garden when the sun was warm. His body was making the same strategic choices Robert's was, but Walter partnered with those choices instead of fighting them. The graceful aging happened in Walter's case not because his body was different, but because he understood what his body was doing and supported it. If you're finding this helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me if any of this matches what you've experienced. Here's something else I want you to think about. You might have noticed you're more sensitive to medications than you used to be. Maybe a painkiller that barely touched a headache when you were 60 now works with half the dose. Maybe you feel the effects of a glass of wine more strongly. Maybe your doctor has reduced your prescriptions because you're responding to smaller amounts. This isn't weakness. This is actually often a sign of efficiency. When your liver and kidneys are aging gracefully, they're still processing medications and substances effectively, but your body composition has changed. You have less water volume, different ratios of fat to muscle. Medications concentrate more, and when you're sensitive to medications, when smaller doses work well, it often means your body is absorbing and using them efficiently. The people who age most gracefully with this change are the ones who recognize it and adjust. They talk to their doctors about dosing. They pay attention to how they feel. They don't assume more is better. They let their body's responses guide them. I knew two men, both 74, both taking medication for blood pressure. Frank insisted on the same dose he'd been taking for years, even though he sometimes felt dizzy, even though his blood pressure readings were dropping lower than they needed to be. He thought changing the dose meant his body was failing, meant he was getting weaker. He associated the full dose with strength. George noticed the dizziness and talked to his doctor. They reduced his medication by a third. His blood pressure stabilized perfectly. He felt steady on his feet. He had more energy because his blood pressure wasn't being pushed too low. George understood that his body's increased sensitivity wasn't failure. It was his body working efficiently, requiring less medication to achieve the same healthy result. That's the unexpected sign. Increased sensitivity to substances, when you work with it rather than against it, often indicates your body is processing things well. It's aging gracefully because it's responsive, because it's still regulating itself, just at different thresholds than before. Let me tell you about something else you might have noticed. Your balance might not be quite what it was. Maybe you reach for the handrail more often on stairs. Maybe you're more careful stepping off a curb. Maybe you pause before standing up from a low chair. And perhaps you felt ashamed of this, like it marks you as old, as declining. But here's what I need you to understand. The fact that you're noticing these things, that you're being more careful, that's your body's awareness system working beautifully. Many people who fall badly in their 70s fall because they didn't notice their balance had changed. They moved with the same confidence they had at 50, and their body couldn't match it. But when you notice, when you feel that slight uncertainty and respond by being more deliberate, by using the handrail, by taking an extra second to steady yourself, you're letting your body's protective instincts work. The sign of graceful aging isn't that your balance is perfect. It's that your awareness has increased to match the change in your balance. Your body is telling you to be careful, and you're listening. That partnership, that's what keeps you upright and independent. I've seen this with two women I knew well, both 77, both living independently. Eleanor noticed her balance wasn't as certain as it used to be, and she became more cautious. She held railings. She wore shoes with good support. She turned on lights at night before walking through her house. She exercised to maintain strength. And Eleanor stayed steady. She didn't fall. She maintained her independence because she accepted what her body was telling her and made small adjustments. Barbara felt the same changes but refused to acknowledge them. She thought being careful meant admitting defeat. She rushed. She wore slippery shoes because they looked nice. She got up quickly without steadying herself first. And Barbara fell. Not once, but several times. Each fall shook her confidence more than the last. She ended up more restricted, more afraid than Eleanor ever was. The irony is that Eleanor, by accepting her body's signals and adapting to them, stayed more active and more independent than Barbara, who fought those signals. Eleanor's body was aging gracefully, and she aged gracefully with it. One more thing I want to share with you, and this one might be the most unexpected of all. You might have noticed that you cry more easily now than you used to. Maybe a sentimental commercial gets to you. Maybe a kind gesture from a stranger brings tears to your eyes. Maybe you feel emotions more readily, more intensely, closer to the surface. And if you're a man especially, you might feel embarrassed by this. You might think it means you're losing control, becoming weak. But let me tell you what this actually means. Research tells us that emotional responsiveness in later years often correlates with better emotional processing, with deeper connections to the people around you, with a kind of wisdom that comes from having lived long enough to know what matters. When you cry more easily, when you feel moved by beauty or kindness or sadness, it often means your emotional regulation has shifted toward authenticity. You're less defended. You're more open. And that openness, that emotional availability, it's associated with better relationships, better mental health, more satisfaction with life. The people who age most gracefully emotionally aren't the ones who stay tough and unmoved. They're the ones who let themselves feel, who aren't ashamed of tears, who recognize that emotional responsiveness is a form of being fully alive. I think of two men I knew, both 80, both veterans who'd lived through hard times. Thomas tried to stay stoic. When he felt emotion rising, he pushed it down. He thought showing feeling meant weakness. He kept people at a distance because he was afraid of being too emotional around them. And Thomas became increasingly isolated. His relationships stayed surface level. He felt lonely but couldn't admit it. Henry let himself soften. When something moved him, he let the tears come. He talked about his feelings with his adult children. He wasn't ashamed of being affected by the world around him. And Henry had deep, honest relationships. His grandchildren sought him out because he was present with them, emotionally available. He felt connected, purposeful, alive. His emotional openness gave him a richness in his later years that Thomas never found. The unexpected sign here is that increased emotional responsiveness, the tendency to cry more easily. It's often evidence of healthy emotional aging. It's your body and mind integrating a lifetime of experience into deeper feeling. That's not decline. That's a kind of blossoming. So let me bring this all together for you. These unexpected signs, these changes you might have been worrying about, they tell a different story than you might have thought. Earlier sleep patterns, decreased appetite, increased medication sensitivity, heightened awareness of balance, emotional responsiveness, even that tendency to feel colder, these aren't necessarily signs of failing. They're often signs that your body is adapting intelligently to this stage of life. The question isn't whether these changes are happening. They are, for most people. The question is how you respond to them. Do you fight them, deny them, feel ashamed of them? Or do you recognize them as information, as your body communicating with you, telling you how to support it best? Graceful aging isn't about staying the same as you were at 50. It's about adapting well to each stage, about learning the new language your body speaks, about making small adjustments that let you stay independent, capable, and connected to what matters most to you. I want you to think about one change you've noticed in your own body lately. Just one. Something you've been worried about or confused by. And I want you to ask yourself this question. Could this be my body adapting rather than failing? Could this be information rather than evidence of decline? Because most of the time, when I've seen people make that shift in thinking, when they start seeing changes as adaptation rather than loss, they make better choices. They support their bodies instead of fighting them. They stay independent longer. They feel more capable, more at peace with who they are now. You don't have to change everything at once. You don't have to be perfect. But if you can make one small adjustment this week, one choice that supports what your body is trying to tell you, you'll be doing something important. You'll be partnering with your aging instead of resisting it. And that partnership, that's where grace lives. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If something I've said here has shifted how you think about what's happening in your body, let me know in the comments. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, someone who's struggling to understand their own aging, please share this with them. These conversations matter. They change how we experience these years. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with me through this. I'll be here next time with more observations, more patterns worth noticing. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Your body is doing remarkable things, even in the changes that worry you. Trust it a little more. Listen a little closer. You might be surprised by what you find.